Hello, and today we'll be playing the newest update of Lyre. So, there are some slight differences, like the UI has changed, and the font here in the menu has changed also. So, like, when at the bottom of the screen it tells you the name of the character and what the character is saying, there'll be a portrait of that character sewn with it. And you'll understand what you'll see. When we begin, you'll understand. So, this is after both Victor and Lyre escaped Lyre. Last time Victor tried to escape execution in Lyre, Victor tried to escape execution in Lyre, and Lyre managed to catch him and grab him while he was riding on a horse. And they had to flee real fast on the horse because a sea of arrows was coming down towards them. It's gonna start now. Lyle's padded feet clamber about the floor of the tunnel as he runs his paws along the rough walls. Each step he takes makes his legs feel like they're twisting into a knot. The long cloak draped around his body drags on the damp floor, the hem soaked in cold mud. The long dark cape underneath also becomes lined with a damp stain as it's pulled across the wet surface. Hiding all over the castle and town has been a struggle on his body, having not eaten in days and barely getting enough sleep. Still, his face is determined and his stature looks as strong as ever. The armor underneath his shroud is as heavy as the ornamental set he wears when stationed around the castle, which helps with getting around in the cramped tunnel. With every stride, his pace becomes faster, almost like when one would be excited for something around the corner of a long hall, and as they round it, they feel like they forgot how to walk. But instead of being excited, Lyre is filled with anxiety and fear. He overheard the guards. He knows what's going to happen. The cruelty of it all. Lyre had only ever read about events like this in books, but to think agents would reenact such a thing. In the dark, he can see the door at the end of the tunnel opposing him. Barely visible cracks of a light sign from around the door, and Lyre rustles to it in a desperate manner. Timing what has been planned is risky and almost impossible, but it's better to be too early than too late. And yet he stops as he reaches the door, one paw resting on the handle, keys in the other. What he's about to do is very dangerous, but thinking about what will happen if he doesn't even try forces him to shove the key into the hole and pull upon the handle. At first it doesn't buzz, which sends a slight wave of terror through his body. But after pulling harder, he throws the door open and steps through into the western great hall, close to the kitchens. As his bare feet touch the cold stone floor, the door closes with a thud that echoes up the corridor. Lyre prepares himself for what's about to happen. He breaks into a fast walk down the hall, heading straight ahead. As he passes a few junctions, he notices a few people walking by out of the corner of his eye, but they don't pay him any mind. His face is covered by the hood of his cloak, with a thick scarf wrapped around his muzzle. To anyone else, he looked like he just came from outdoors, less suspicious and more like he was just dressed for the weather. It also helps that he's not the only male above average height wandering the castle. When he's around Liz, Ageless or Leaf, he certainly stands out, but he blends in everywhere else. The hall bends and turns into a storage room as he stands over a wooden balcony, stairs to his right, leading down to the main floor. Bales of supplies and tools are strewn about with chairs and boxes stacked against the walls. He's tempted to, for a moment, just take some of the stools, but everything in the bag slung of his bag should help for now. It's better to travel light. There's a few servants who appear to be milling about, but Liao pays them no mind. He quickly descends the stairs that break beneath his feet, making his way to the ground below. Some of the servants look at him, but don't raise concern. He moves past them to the end of the room, which leads to a small hallway. He's taken this route many times, but it's usually more crowded and lively. Once he reaches the end of the hall, he emerges into a room that's outside the courtyard where the stables are. There are saddles and water buckets placed around the room, and it's a lot more clean than he remembers. Lao's heart sinks, and before it can hit the bottom of his stomach, the guard assisting the headsman spots him. It's the lynx that was in Winter's cell when he came down into the dungeons to get him. They're standing on the other side of the room, the headsman carrying a saddle. The door to the courtyard is off to his left, but Liao's already been seen. There's a look of shock and confusion on his face for a moment, but it quickly turns into a look of fear. The captain now brings his voice to a short whisper. Listen to me. You have to let me pass. The headsman stands over in the corner, still holding the saddle, a confused twist into his mouth. Lao looks back at the guard, his paw grasping the grip of his sword. I don't mean to. Before Liao can finish his sentence, the guard rushes forward, but instead of going for Liao, he runs for the door. His paw is placed firmly on the grip of his blade. It's the captain. No! Liao draws the sword, the thick white blade breaking as it slides out of the scabbard. Before he even knows what he's going to do, he's already doing it with full intent. It happens in an instant, but to Liao, it's as if time slowed down. As the lynx makes a break for the door, Liao jumps to the side, bringing his sword back and swinging it into the nape of his neck. It cleaves into the back of the lynx's head, but just underneath their skull and cuts deep, the thick red blood squirting out from the open flesh. The wound so deep that Liao almost cleaved the lynx's entire head off from behind with a single swipe. The guard immediately crumbles to the ground, his plate armor clattering as he hits the floor. Part of his body slams to the wall, carried by the momentum of running to the door. He makes no noise, just laying there silently as the blood gushes from the back of his neck. It pulls onto the ground at Liao's feet, and as the puddle reaches his toes, he staggers back, breathing heavily as the adrenaline wears off. He just took a life. For the first time in all his years of living, he finally had to kill someone. Or did he have to? No, there wasn't any other way. He wants to cry or shout, but he can't do anything of it. If he were to stop and think too hard about any of this, it could mean life or death for both him and Winter. He thought he was prepared to take a life in order to make this plan work, but he wasn't. Nothing prepares you for that. Training to be a soldier, a squire, a knight. How could anyone ever be prepared for something like this? Liao wants to rest onto the floor, but his stomach is so empty that he feels like nothing will come out. Liao looks up at the headsman, expecting him to run or even attempt to cut him down. The headsman just stands there, staring at Liao with a concerned face. Nothing pitiful, but it's definitely not the face of a man pleased with what's happened. Liao swallows, his mouth dry as he addresses the headsman. Do you mean to stand in my way as well? His heart is banging away against his chest. as he can feel his plans crumbling to pieces. The husband stares back at him, those golden eyes shining like the moon as he stands there silently. A sad smile graces his face and as he grips the handle of his gray axe, holding it out in Lyle's direction. I am a tool for the justice shore. He pauses, taking a step back. But above all, I am a servant of Tigran. I will not stand in your way, Lyle Weed. It's impossible trying to separate my dreams from reality. Even harder to separate my dreams from visions. Visions of past lives and others' lived experiences. They all swirl into the center of my thoughts like water flowing down a drain. Like the mind's eye. I've been falling in and out of consciousness for what feels like months, years. Hope not. I hope that I'll wake up any moment now and everything will be fine. Lyle will be lying next to me in a warm bed, his pretty eyes closed as he softly snores. His large yet eloquent paw holding mine in a loose grasp. Once the dreams end, this is all I wish to wake up to. It could be anywhere at any time as long as it's with him at my side. The one person left in this world that I truly feel I can trust. All I can do is wait. I can't even remember much of what happened. It's like nothing happened. Did it ever happen? 3 weeks of the visits of all the dreams I'm enveloped by the world around me. I lay on a bed of fur, my limbs aching, a stinging pain flowing over my back like river rapids. A cold breeze tugged over my skin like a blanket, twisting and tugging around me. My mouth feels dry and the icy wind kisses my lips. I can't really hear anything over the scream of silence in my mind. Everything smells warm, like the dry heat of a fireplace mixed with the smells of burning wood. I can also smell crisp grass and trees. Is this my mind playing tricks on me? Filling my closed eyes with dreams of apparitions, but also triggering my other 4 senses. It's not as overwhelming as the visits, though. They pass by in an uncontrollably fast manner. If I try to slow them down and focus, it becomes harder to think. It's not just that, though. It's like I become lost in them. The visits take hold and I feel frozen in place, only able to watch but unable to comprehend. Like some sort of inanimate object. It feels like hell has grabbed me by the arms holding me in place. I'm scared to give in. But as each moment passes, I wonder if that's my only way out. Letting the mind's eye take full control. After holding out for so long, maybe that's all I can do. Winter flinches as lightning strikes over the horizon, fighting against the fireplace and candles to light up the room. He stands in the corner looking out the window as his heart bangs against his chest. Chewing the hard tips of his fingers, he bounces his leg, his eyes darting away from the window as he hears Alina let out another cry. As he lays there, breathing heavily, all he can do is stand there, unable to help. Her midwife, Guinea, stands by her side, calmly speaking to her while holding her hand. Handmaidens run from the bed to the door, assisting in any way they can while making sure everything goes as planned. The doctors had to be called, which is never a good sign. It was a good sign last time. Dr. Oscar and his assistant Leaf stand by the bed. They're very focused on their work, trying to be quick and careful. Deep breaths, my queen. Deep breaths. Jenny demonstrates for Lena, breathing in slowly and then exhaling in a steady way. Lena attempts to follow her pace. My queen, you're the puss. I understand there's pain, but you can do it. She lets out another scream which circles around the room like a terrible wind. The longer this goes on, the harder it is for Waynor to stay calm. This is their third attempt at having a child. I hope for her sake that this time will be different. Lena wanted to give him an heir so bad, but each time they go through this, it kills a part of him. He can only imagine what it does to her. He observes as Lee runs to her side, a small bowl of medicine to help with the pain being tipped into her mouth. As Wayner watches her struggle and sound rain pounding against the window, one thought rings out through his mind above all the others. This will be the last time. No more attempts after this. The idea of putting her through this pain over and over again always ties his stomach into knots. Her moans of pain grow quiet as the contractions pause, and as they do, the rain grows louder. Wayner can feel chills over his whole body, and he notices the numbness growing around his limbs. Way, get way. His eyes look in her direction, but he's still off into space, lost in the thoughts of everything that can go wrong. My king, she wishes to speak to you. Lino steps out of his trance, looking down at Jenny as she stands off to the side. He rushes over to Alina and brushes his hand on her cheek, kneeling down at her side and grasping her hand in his. It's okay, Alina. I'm here. I'll be here through it all. He makes sure to keep eye contact as he stares up at her eyes tired with flickering eyelids. I know you will. I'm trying, Ray. I really am. He rolls the palm of his hand against hers while sussing her softly. I know you are. Do not push yourself too hard, my love. Leave. I need you over here. Yes, of course. Lee rushes over to Oscar's side, helping with something behind the linen draped over Alina's legs. Raynor continues looking at her, making sure she knows he's there. I will give you the air you need, Ray. I promise you this. Even if it... None of that. Everything's going to be fine, Lena. You're doing great. Steady your breathing now. She lets out a soft yelp that proceeds to groan in pain, the noise growing louder as it goes on. Raynor holds her hand tightly, brushing her cheek, trying to get her to allow his breathing as Jenny was before. Her face twists into a painful expression which whips his heart in half. He takes a moment to look up and sees Jenny on the other side of the bed, holding her other hand. Oscar and Lee stand at the end of the bed, leaning down. Oscar, what's happening? I can see them. The child has breached. Elena lets out another howl of pain. Raynor catches himself, squeezing her hand tightly. He loosens his grip, but as he does, she clasps her hand around his tightly, squeezing even harder than he was. Deep breaths, my queen. The baby's almost through. Raynor wants to hug her, pull her into a tight embrace, and tell her everything is going to be okay. He wishes to take all of the pain away from her and deliver it onto herself. But all he can do is sit there and hold her hand, repeating the same phrases he can think of that will help. Deep breaths. Everything's going to be okay. You're doing fine. Jenny, come here quickly. It's happening. She lets out another scream, a scream that seems to last for hours. Then she falls back into the bed, her body sinking into it, exhaling and closing her eyes. They're here. A wave of relief flows over Raynor upon hearing the words. As Oscar and Leaf take care of the child, removing them from Elena, Raynor holds her hand, tears falling from his eyes onto the clean linens which she lays upon. Handmaidens run about, carrying bowls and cloth, making sure Oscar and Leaf have everything that they need for the process. And Lena slowly opens her eyes, giving Raynor a weak smile. Before he can become lost in it, the noise around him drowns out his other senses. Raynor looks up, watching as Leaf works with Oscar, Jenny standing over them and assisting in any way she can. Two handmaidens run out of the room, and there was others staying behind, attempting to attend to Lena. Through all the commotion and the pounding rain on the window, Winter can't help but notice one thing. Not a single cry can be heard from the baby. What's wrong? Your Majesty, Dear, what's the matter? Elena looks up at him with an anxious gaze, her eyes now wide open. I. The baby is not breathing properly. Before Oscar can continue to explain, Elena lets out a moan. No, this can't happen. Why? Why, you have to do something. Just then, Jenny and Leaf walks to her side, Jenny holding her arm. My queen, please, you need to calm down. The good doctor knows what he's doing. Everything's going to be fine. Elena doesn't give in for a moment and begins to yell. No, let me see him. Let me hold my child, please. Winter notices Leaf has his winged hand placed on Elena's shoulder, but instead of looking at her, he looks at Oscar standing on the other side of the room. He has the foreign placed on a clean blanket in a small corner. He's examining the child, carefully placing his hand upon their small chest and feeling around. The child lays there motionless. Not a sound to be heard from them. No, 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 no. Why is my child not breathing? Raina feels like the world has come to a stop. There his child sits laying on the table with little hands clasped at their sides. His wife weaves in anguish upon the bed, their bed. This is their bed, their room, their home, their den, the place where they will bring their child into this world. Every noise around him sounds distant and far away. His wife grips his hand tightly as his arm sits limply at his side. Just then, through all the noise and chaos, a small voice rises above it all. I know what to do. Elena turns her head in the bird's direction, his gaze still trained on the child. Leave, please attend to the queen. I know what to do. Doctor, please let me help. This is a very rare case, but I've seen this before. Leave, there's nothing to be. The child's not breathing. Just then Elena shouts across the room. Let him help. Oscar. You let him save my child, while I swear upon Tigran, I will make sure you feel double the pain I felt on this day. Yes, McQueen. Leaf rushes to Oscar's side, and Oscar steps back as Leaf gently picks up the child in his hands. Reynold's attention is turned back to his wife, her face serious yet full of concern. Stay with me. I need you. Of course, Lena. Of course. He leans down and kisses her on the forehead, running his hand up and down her arm. Are they a prince? Her voice changes to a soft tone as he weakly asks his question. Raynor looks up at Leaf, who is doing delicate compressions on the child's chest, rubbing up and down softly. Our child. Are they a boy or a girl? Leaf doesn't break away from their work for a moment as they answer. You have a beautiful little prince, McQueen. Raynor looks back down at Lena, but she just stares at the ceiling, swallowing as her body trembles. A boy, Lena. We've had a son. She doesn't reply, just continuing to stare at the ceiling, blinking away tears that roll over the fur on her face and onto the pillow beneath her head. We've had a little boy. Raynor can feel his own tears begin to spill from his eyes. His voice shakes as he tries to get the words out. The happiest moment of his life hangs in front of him on a string taunting him, hanging by a thread, ready to be ripped away at any moment. But as the dark thoughts begin to close in on him like a cloud of smoke, a noise blows it all away. Jenny and Oscar rush to Lee's side as the boy breaks out into a fit of crying. It sounds like a squealing pig, but to Raynor, it's the most wonderful thing he's ever heard. The sound of his son coming back to life. He stands up and looks in the direction of the noise and sees Leaf holding the boy in his arms, rocking him slightly before passing him to the doctor. You've done it. Oh, praise God. Jenny begins to help Oscar wrap the boy in a clean, minty green blanket. Leaf rests his winged hands onto the edge of a cart, staring at the floor as he breathes heavily. Raynor wants to run over and lift Leaf up, pulling him into a tight embrace, but looks down at his wife first. He's never seen her look more relieved. It's as if every worry in the world has left her thoughts, replaced with the sound of their crying child. Julie quickly brings the boy over to Alina and passes him to her. You don't need to check on him. You can check on him later, but I've never seen a healthier child. But now you may hold him. Alina takes the boy in her arms and cradles him, tears of joy staining the fur on her cheeks. Oh my God, Ray, look at him. He's perfect. He has your nose, Ray. Look. Reno lets out a laugh, which comes out more like a gasp. The taste of tears invaded his mouth as they flowed down to the corners of his muzzle. The boy rests in her arms, his little brown eyes open ever so slightly as his nose twists. He cries and cries, throwing his little arms about with tiny clasped hands. His little hoof feet kick the inside of his blanket sporadically. Yes, I see that. He has your beautiful eyes. She lets out a laugh and cradles her hand beneath his head. Raina leans down and kisses her on the hair a few times, wrapped with relief. He then turns to Leaf, who is now standing behind him near the end of the bed. You and Oscar helped assist my wife when she was in pain. But most of all, you saved my son. I can never fully repay you for what you've done tonight. Leaf fiddles with his wings, looking down at the ground after being praised so highly. I was just doing my job, Your Majesty. There's no need to be that. Raina kneels down, pulls a small bird into a tight hug, taking care not to crush him. When he pulls away, the bird is a little dazed but clasps his wings together, giving a large smile. Why? Raina turns around to look at Alina, who still cradled her son in her arms. You have to name him. Give our son his name. Raina stands and walks back over to Alina, her smile soft, but her eyes are happier than he's ever seen him. Just then, the sound of thunder rattles against the window, along with the pain pounding against it. Shadows of the water droplets sliding down the window scatter across the floor and canopy of the bed, creating a mesmerizing effect. Raina looks down at his son, his chubby little arms flailing at his sides as he wails. He smiles, even for a baby, but Raina sees great strength hidden inside the tiny body, the strength of a king. Raina smiles and reaches down, the boy grabbing his fingers with his tiny hand. You fought hard to come into this world, little one. You have your mother's strength. The boy stops crying for just a moment, but still wiggles about in his mother's arms. Child of the storm, your name would be Adris. Alina smiles, brushing her hand gently over one of Adris' small ears. A worthy name for a worthy king. Alina jumps in her sleep after hearing a knock at the door. Raina, sleeping like a rock, doesn't move one bit. She slides out the bed, her nightrobe flowing behind her as she walks to the door. Mother? Once she hears the voice of her son, she pulls the handle and opens the door for him. Sweetie, what's wrong? Can you not sleep? He stands in the doorway, his little ears turned back. I had a really bad dream. The boy looks ready to burst into tears, but seems to be holding them back pretty well. Did you not tell the maid? I told her I wanted to see you. How did you sneak past the guards? There's no sneaking around, Sir Bjorn. They let me up here. She turns around to look at Raynor, who still hides under the covers, his antlers and ears poking out from the top of the blanket. He continues to sleep, snoring softly like he always does. Okay, come on in, but we have to be very quiet. Your father's sleeping and needs his rest for when he leaves tomorrow. Okay? He whispers this, giving a tiny smile before quietly walking into the room. After closing the door, she takes his hand and leads him to the sofa by the east window. Now, what was your dream about? She sits down on the sofa and Adris hops onto her lap, resting his head against her. It was a normal dream at first. A lot of weird things were happening. None of it made any sense. There was one part scared me a lot, though. I was outside playing in the garden. The grass in the garden was all yellow, though. Dead grass? No, yellow as if it was made of gold. All the plants were like that, too. There was this anthill. It was in between two bricks on the path. I almost stepped on it, but stopped myself. Then I saw me. What do you mean? It was just me. It just holds her hand tighter, and Elena places her chin upon the top of his head. He walked up to where the anthill was, holding a wooden pail, smiling at me in a creepy way. The side of the bucket was fired, and he poured it into the anthill. The fire moved like water as it poured down the top entrance. When he did this, the ants crawled up my legs, biting me all over. I was so scared, but then he tossed the fire onto my legs. It didn't burn at all, but all of the ants died. Then he held out his hand to help me up. The entire time, all I could hear was loud drums and yelling. Elena rubbed his back with her hand, rocking him slightly as he leans into her. When I took his hand, I woke up. Andres, it was just a bad dream. Nothing to be afraid of. I know, but I'm still scared. I don't want you to go to Dries. After hearing this, Elena hugs him tightly. Oh, sweetie, why can't I come with you? He says with his face pressed into her body, his voice muffled by her robe. Angels, it's as we said before. You must stay because an Arjan must always look after the kingdom. She pulls him away and rests her hand on her shoulders. Aren't you excited about that? I don't know. You'll be looking after the entire kingdom. You can sit on the throne and take care of everything. Sounds hard. Oh, believe me, it is. Your grandfather will be helping you, though. That will make things much easier. She pokes his nose while saying this, making him giggle softly. You're going to be a wonderful king one day. This will be a fun test for you. Like a learning experience? Exactly. They sat there for a moment longer before Adris breaks the silence, wiping his eyes. Can you sing to me like you used to? Elena looks over at Raynor, who still lies still in the bed, his soft snores, a quiet ambience for their conversation. Quietly? All right. But then you're going right back to bed, little prince. He eagerly nods and then rests on her. Elena intones a small tune to test her vocals before humming a song. Andrews bounds down the corridor, his small hooves clopping against the smooth stone flooring. The prince skids to a stop at one of the windows and brings himself up with his arms to look over the balustrade. There, just over the horizon, he can see carts, wagons, and carriages slowly rolling over the hills of the northern one. He drops down from his lifted position and continues to bolt down the hallway, almost running into a servant carrying a box. Sorry. He twists around while wanting to apologize to the servant, shaking their head in amusement. As he runs, he keeps his focus on the carriages, watching as they draw closer. The beams and pillars on the balcony pass by in a blur as he continues his sprint. Then he stops. If it wasn't for his youthful agility, he would have silly fell over, coming to a stop so suddenly. His eyes stay focused on the caravan, and he walks up to the balustrade once more. This time he stands on the base, planting his hooves on a small slab of stone near the bottom. There's not as many wagons now. Some of them were carrying goods that needed to be traded, so of course this was inevitable. Still, Idris knew those wagons should have come back empty or not. Surely they should be more in the entourage. He knows there should be more. Then he notices the soldiers. It's hard to distinguish them from the squires and stable boys as both trudge alongside the carts. Some of them look dreadfully tired while others ride in the carts, their heads down. Angels can even see what looks to be injured men. Some lying on the floors of wagons, others being held along by their fellow men, arms around each other's shoulders. Angel starts to feel a lump forming in his throat, but the fear instead settles in his stomach. It turns and twists inside of him as his eyes dance over each cluster of men. Some of the carts they're being carried in look new, not made from the same wood as the ones from around Lyre. Jenny rounds the corner, slowly walking down the hall. Angel bites his cheek when he sees the last wagon roll over the hillside, not followed by any others. Doing another scan, Angel realizes that among all those things, one thing stands out to him the most. Come along, my prince. Your mother and father have returned. Yes, it's a question he wanted an answer to the moment he first looked out the window. A question that he's been asking himself since he first laid eyes upon the entourage. Where's the royal carriage? Angel drops from the support, landing on his hands and knees. My prince, he ignores her, rising in a sprint, almost tripping over himself. His breath is fast and his legs are unsteady as he darts down the corridor. All Jenny would be able to hear is the fast clopping of hooves against smooth stone flooring. Reno stands outside the door to Idris's chambers. His gloved hand rests limply on the antler-shaped handle of the door. Idris, please. You haven't left your room in days. He speaks through the crack in the center of the doors, his muzzle almost pressed against it. There's no response from the inside. The servants tell me you haven't been eating. Your mother wouldn't want this. Still no response. So you're going to do nothing? Angel stands in the doorway to his father's room, the king's expression turning into a frown. That's not what I said. And yet, it's what will happen anyway. Angel barges past him into the room, his father stepping back and letting him in, closing the door behind him with a thud. Oh, of course. You know, I'd really rather you question me in front of the entire court than whatever this is. This? This is a private conversation where more can be said than what's spoken of in front of the court. Or do you not like that? Reno's nose twitches and he walks over to the wine by the cupboard. What are your issues? Ask Leave. I'm sure he tells you everything. Reno's shoulders slump and he lets out a sigh. He finishes pouring 2 cups of red wine and turns to bring one to Idris. Not those issues. Idris, now sitting on the end of the bed, takes the cup and rests it in his lap, holding it with both hands. My issue lies with the fact that you refuse to take any action. Here, we are in a time of peace, but it's not like that everywhere. You think I don't know this? Idris, I am doing everything in my power to solve the problems to our south. Greece has absolute control over the territory where the heart of the problem is. Until they can take action, my hands are tied. Idris gestures with his hand towards the south. Laws be damned. The problem is bleeding into our lands and causes the suffering of our people. With each day that passes, they grow stronger. That barren wasteland keeps spilling them onto our lands, and you want to sit there and say we're powerless? Reno lets out a sigh and pinches the bridge of his nose. We need to fight back against this problem, with or without Dweez's permission. I know that the small steps I take in order to solve these problems go unappreciated, but it's the only route we can take. So you know the reason why then? Idris. Dweez has no concern for the problems in the canyons. It doesn't affect their citizens nearly as much as ours. King Aaron sits on his throne daily and does nothing to help. And yet, we are forbidden from causing conflict beyond our own borders. King Aaron doesn't care. Raynar looks as if he's going to start lecturing Aegis, but he holds back. They sit there in silence for a moment, but Aegis doesn't let the silence hang in the air for long. Do you remember Mother's funeral? Raynar breathes in deeply and exhales, closes his eyes. Like it was yesterday. I remember everything all too vividly. It was about a week after her murder. All the lords and ladies from all over Lyre traveled day and night to pay their respects and mourn. After that was a private burial. She wanted to be buried on the hill just outside of our garden, so that's what we did. What is the point of all this? Every noble from Braden's Vale to Grimrock came to pay respects to your wife, my mother, and yet not a single word was heard from King Aaron. He doesn't care. Mother's blood was spilled on his sands, and we haven't heard from your supposed friend since. Enough. You give this issue so little attention that it's safe to assume you don't care either. It's like you've given up. Quiet. You mourned her, but now you don't even like to talk about her. You're going to keep bottling this up, then eventually spill it on someone. You don't even speak of her around me, your son. You just hide in your castle while people meet the same fate as her. Aegis' chest rises with each breath as he's now standing from his seat, wine glass slammed on the end table. Raynar just stands there silently. His face has traces of anger, which slowly fade away, almost going unnoticed by Aegis. Well? Still no response from Raynar, his head lowered. Aegis makes his way to the door and goes to turn the knob, angry tears forming at the corners of his eyes. Why did you kill me? Aegis stops turning the knob, a chill running up his spine, bristling the fur on the back of his neck. He turns around to stare at his father, eyes wide open, with a confused expression plastered on his face. What? It was here, in this very room. You killed your own father. Father, what are you talking about? Is this some sort of cruel joke? Raynar doesn't answer, which causes Aegis to become even more confused. You lost Lyre as well. This statement hits Aegis a little harder. I didn't lose him. You paved the road ahead. You'll never be able to go back. Tears now stream down Aegis' face as Raynar stands there like a statue, spouting out these cryptic messages. Aegis, I love you more than life itself. You don't even know what you're running from anymore. Ah! Aegis lunges forward in his bed, the deer's chest heaving as he chokes on his first deep breath. What? My father? What was I? Sitting up in bed, he pulls the seats closer to him, gripping them in his fist. The nightmare he just had fades away. Aegis lunges forward in his bed, the deer's chest heaving as he chokes on his first deep breath. But my father? What was I? Sitting up in his bed, he pulls the sheets closer to him, gripping them in his fist. The nightmare he just had fades away as suddenly as it came, like water evaporating on a hot summer's day. His father was angry with him? No, disappointed. Arguing. Aegis sits there for a moment, his mind desperately grasping the air for the dream, but to no avail. Aegis tosses the covers from his body, the cold morning air rushing over his fur. Looking outside the window, he realizes that it's closer to noon than morning. He must have slept in. He brings his hand to his bare chest, sliding his fingers across it until he finds the necklace hung around his neck. Rubbing the soft part of his fingers over the piece of gold, he can feel the shape of the antlers on his base. It was his mother's. After this, he brings his hands up to his head, firmly rubbing the area where his antler is missing. A small bit of bone still lingers, but hasn't had enough time to heal properly in order to start growing once more. He then rubs his muzzle, the scar still feeling fresh, but has healed for the most part. It's nice to not need the bandages anymore, as they were becoming a pain for him. Not only that, but as much as he wished he had both antlers, it's nice to have one less sharp-pointed object that accidentally ran through the headboard of the bed. Angel turns to look at the bed he's sitting on. His father's bed, the king's chambers. The entire room had been given to him upon ascending the throne. Of course, only after 8 minutes to fix the place up. Angel's own room, however, is still being renovated. So this is the only place he can sleep for the time being. It's only natural that he does sleep here. He's a king after all. His own room is merely a personal choice. Throwing his legs over the right side of the bed, his hooved feet touch the floor below and rest for a moment. A sharp head pain overcomes him as he arches his back, laying his head down between his legs. He takes a sharp breath in between his teeth while clenching them. As he's recovering, there's a knock at the door. Leave? It is my king. Idris looks down at himself, saying that he's only in his undergarments. It's only leave, so no need to look presentable. Come in. Idris hears the jingle of keys and then the sound of the door unlocking, a loud thud as the mechanisms fall into place. Lee pushes the door open and shuffles into the room. He then braces the other side and pushes it closed. Good morning, Your Majesty. I take it there was no need to wear the bandages? Idris shuffles back onto the bed, covering his waist with part of the blanket. I assume so, considering I didn't bleed all over the linens. That's very good to hear. Will you allow me to examine the, He points up at the top of Idris's head. Of course, Idris leans his head down for the bird to take a closer look. Lee takes a close look at the area where the antler was broken off, brushed outside the fur around the wound. He then gently pokes the small bit left behind. Any pain? A little bit. How about if I do this? Lee presses down firmly on the top, which causes a small shock of pain, which then spreads around the area. Ow, yes. Aegis pulls away from the bird, slightly lifting his arms in defense. My apologies, I just have one last thing I need to check. Then go ahead and get it over with. Aegis lowers his head once more and Lee touches the small bit of horn one last time. This time he's gently pushing and tugging on the sides. Do you feel any pressure? No. Lee pulls his hand away and falls silent, not saying a word. Is that everything? Yes. How is it? Lee takes a moment to respond before weakly coughing into his arm. It may take a bit more time to heal than we originally thought. No growth formula? No, that would not be advised. I've been in contact with the royal smith to have a temporary prosthetic made. Your new crown will also be finished soon. As you requested, it will resemble the crown of your great-grandfather. Alright. Yes, very good. Idris slides out the bed once more, standing up and walking over toward the wardrobe in the corner. He pulls out the lowest drawer and lifts a pair of black trousers from it. So, where's Liz? I'd like to know if there is anything on the agenda today that I don't know about. Fortunately, I can tell you that personally. About an hour after noon, there are several citizens who have made appointments to speak with you in your councils about certain matters. Angels pulls the trousers up and Angels pulls the trousers up around his waist and buttons the top. He then reaches for a lilac shirt folded neatly in the middle compartment. Other than that, it's a mostly uneventful day. However, I'm not just up here to check on your injuries. Oh, this was the one who sent me. She wishes to speak with you. She can come and see me whenever she likes. Ace finishes putting on the first layer of clothing, then begins buttoning his vest. She was actually very insistent that you meet her in the court chambers. Ace freezes while buttoning the last button on his vest. Very well. Has Bjorn recovered yet? No, I'm afraid he hasn't. Be sure to let me know as soon as he wakes. Of course. A few moments pass as Aegis progresses through the rest of the process of dressing himself. Are you well? Never better, why? You seem a bit stressed. Aegis turns around, looking down the bird. I'm only tired, that's all. Are you absolutely sure? Of course. Leaf walks back and forth on his feet before prying again. I'm not just talking about your physical health. I want to know how you're doing after everything that's happened. These haven't begun to slow down until recently, and ever since all this chaos started, you've seen. I'm fine, Leaf. You can start interrogating me now. Aegis makes his way to the door. I'll go see what Liz wants. You really plan on killing Lyre? Aegis whirls around his cape, twisting with his body. If it comes down to it, it's not something you should be worrying about. If the Horse Cavalry captures Lyre alive, he'll get a fair trial. Like the trial Victor was given? Aegis advances on Leaf, looking down on him with cold, dark eyes. Leaf, if I wanted your opinions on the current events, I would have appointed you as my advisor, not my physician. Leaf takes a step back, but then speaks, his voice quiet. I know more about what's going on than you understand. I've been by your side constantly throughout this entire tragedy. Aegis disregards him, turning around to leave, but Leaf continues. And it wasn't you who appointed me as a royal physician. It was your father. Need I remind you why? The deer stops at the door and stands there for a moment. After a few seconds pass, he sighs and turns around. I'm not in need of a reminder. I truly do value you and your wisdom, Leaf. Just don't get under my fur about this situation again. Leaf tilts his head to the side in a ponderous manner as if showing the agreement. Very well. Now, let's go see what Liz wants. Is he doing better? Aegis opens the door and holds it for the small bird as he tentatively walks through. Thank you. And no, not really. Lee scuttles ahead of Aegis to the chamber room and pulls it open, holding it for him. Aegis strides through as he enters, his eyes adjust to the dim, candlelit room. Candles are lit throughout the room, and letters and books clutter the table. On the other side of the room, at the end of the table, Liz stands over an old large book among several other pieces of parchment and scrolls. She looks tired, her hair tied back messily, and her eyes bloodshot. She's also visibly drunk. In front of her, on the table, sits a chalice full of wine, along with a couple of empty bottles. She stands up from her chair, a scowl upon her face as Aegis enters the room. Dear God, have you even slept? Leaf quietly follows him behind, closes the door and standing by it. Letters. She picks up a scroll and throws it across the table. Aegis leans over and casts it before it lands on the table. From who? Dries. Aegis' fingers tense around the paper as he unrolls it carefully. Holding it up to a candle, he reads it to himself. My sons and I offer you our sincere condolences for the murder of your father, King Raynar. Will hold a special place in our hearts. We pray for the prosperity of your kingdom and wish you good health. Aaron Starfall. I can already see you're mad. Reasonably so. King Arwen only wants to touch on the subject of a death in the family as a form of risk management. Idris crumples up the letter and throws it to the side. That's important, Idris. Relax, it's not even his handwriting. I've helped Father answer and send letters for the past 3 years. After the incident, his hands never quite recovered. Liz stumps back into her chair, piercing the bridge of her nose. Lee goes over to her side, placing his ring on her hand. Anything else of importance? Liz sits up in her chair slightly, reaching for a letter on the table. You know me. I say the best for last. A letter from the judge of Holmes End. She clears her throat and reads out what's written down on the piece of parchment. We had numerous attacks from the northern sides of the canyons. Several villages and settlements south of Holmes End have been bombarded with raids. Halfton is in ruin. I urge you to make contact with the King of Druids in order to formulate a solution. She rolls up the letter and tosses it back onto the table, taking a sip from her chalice. Idris leans on the table, anger burning deep inside of him. With each word she spoke, his rage festered. Call upon the royal army. Have them march on the canyons and kill every single bandit, criminal, and barbarian. Idris, come with this end. I want that entire nest wiped out. Man, woman, and child. I won't rest until that stains right from the map. We can't do that. Without Druids' cooperation, we can't march on their lands. Your father knew this, and I'm completely certain you know it. I don't care if you don't agree with it. You know this is the right choice. Lee picks up the letter and reads it over, clearly nervous about what's happening. Crossing their border will do more damage than what's already been done. No, they have lost complete control over that part of their territory. No matter how many troops they send in to clear out the main road, the heart of the problem will always continue to grow. They focus so much on their manpower towards building and cultivating the size of their kingdom. They let others drown in the problems they breed while continuing to rise above those beneath them. Druids uses faith as a tool of deception and a beacon for those around them, yet they are fully content with letting everyone be consumed by the blood-stained sands. Listen to me. She slaps her hand on the table in exasperation. It won't work out the way you want it to. Lee clears his throat. She's right, Your Majesty. Going about these problems in a careful manner is the best solution. We cannot afford to cause one predicament while trying to solve another. Liz sighs and looks back up at Idris from across the table. This is the first time Idris has seen her lose her temper in a while. Idris, you have to stop making these rash decisions. I feel as if I'm the only one who's making any of the decisions. Druids would let evil gestate within the very blood-stained sands of their kingdom rather than commit to anything. For once, please trust that I have this kingdom's best interests at heart. I admire your resolve, but we need time to figure things out. Fine. Idris shouts this at her, and she jumps slightly. Leave morsel. He sits down in the chair behind him and steadies his breathing. A headache begins to develop, but he rolls the sides of his head with his fingers, keeping it at bay for the time being. How soon can we send soldiers to take control of the area? I want the villages closest to the canyons to be well guarded in case of any future attacks. It will take days to even deliver the order to our garrison south of Flinthaven. Not only that, but from there, the journey south will take a week at least, given the supplies needed to set up camp. Have the garrison in the towns, then. I don't care how it's done, just make sure Holmes End has decent protection against these southern invaders. I'll have the order drawn up immediately. Liz rises from her chair with the help of Leaf and leaves for the door. Leaf, be a dear and have a cartographer brought to my room. Certainly. Angels holds up his hand as he stops before rounding the table. I did not dismiss you. She rests her hands on the table, glowering at him. Let it be known that I've always had this kingdom's best interest at heart. I'm sure you do. But did it ever occur to you that you don't know everything? Elizabeth. No, Leaf, let her continue. In the privacy of these chambers, I won't shrink from criticism. As a figurehead, I can't be questioned, but as a king. Asia sits up in his chair, resting his hand underneath his chin. Go on, Liz. I want you to be honest with me. Your Majesty, she's intoxicated. She doesn't mean. I'm fine, Leaf. She mutters this in his direction, regretting her teeth, and he steps back. We received no word from Aaron on the subject of Lord Richter. None. If we had kept him as a hostage, then we might have been on a better track towards clarity. But here we stand. No Radiant Lord. No answers. She takes in a deep breath and exhales, hysterical expression appearing on her face. Not only have we lost Lord Richter, but Liao is run off with him. Only God knows where. Liao Reed. I understand your constant ill treatment of him would lead you to forget this, but he is the only son of Lord Marcus Reed. They're a small house now, but still one of the oldest and most powerful aside from your own. And I've just had to send his Lord Father a letter telling him that his son has committed murder, treason, has run away with the man known for killing the king. And this is somehow my fault? A small part, yes. Sending Richter to his death like that was never going to work out. It was a dramatic display at best, and now we have to deal with it. I need to use him as an example. Letting him escape was never my intention. Oh, traditions be damned. His execution was a game for you. Toying with a man's life like that. I voted him innocent for a reason. Why did you vote him innocent? What? I've been wondering for days. Idris leans back in his chair, a scowl growing on his face. This gives him no answer, and he sighs. I'll ask again some other time. Is that everything? For now. I will think about what you said. However, I know your mission in Dries was somewhat successful, but it's clear that our situation with Dries has become far worse. I will be taking action if things proceed down this path. Silence falls over the room, aside from the sound of Leaf nervously shuffling in the corner of the room. Going west, Liz. We'll speak more about this later. Liz takes a book off of the table along with a few scrolls and briskly walks to the door. Her free hand on the door handle and turns to Idris. Idris? What? I'm on your side whether you want to believe it or not. And I truly do care for you. He shuffles in his seat and turns to looking at her. I know. That's what I like about you. Your unwavering allegiance. Rest well. She opens the door and steps through the doorway, the sound of her shoes tapping against the floor as she walks off. The door closes by itself with a soft thud echoing throughout the room. Leaf. Yes, Your Majesty? Idris was the spot where his antler should be. I feel a headache coming on. Cancel the appointments I have later. Of course, Your Majesty. Would you like some medicine for the pain? Very much, yes. Idris rises from his seat and picks up the crumpled letter from Dries. Understanding the pain becomes more apparent. He slowly makes his way to the door, which Leaf graciously opens for him. Once he steps through the doorway, an odd feeling washes over him. It's a feeling similar to how one would feel after waking up from drinking too much the night before. Waking up to an unfamiliar surrounding, or somewhere you shouldn't be. Where did he turns to leave, who has a puzzled gaze behind his mask. I'll be in my room, if needed. I'm going to stop here for today. So, Idris is getting those headaches that Ritter had could possibly be the fact that he has some powers of his own, or could Tigran or one of the gods may be in contact with Asia somehow. So we got to see that dream he had, and in my opinion, that might have been Raynor for real, telling Idris why he killed him. And he told him that he lost Lyre. And so, yeah, that's, yeah. So, we got to see how Idris was born, and his react. We got to see him with his mother, and the fact that he doesn't want his mother to go to Dries. I think Idris himself might have thought that his mother might be in some trouble if she went to Dries, or if she came back from Dries. That's just my guess. And we also got to see him and what he was before, right before the caravan came back from Dries. Something didn't look right to him, and that was right after his brother was killed, and they were carrying his mother's body back, because it looked weird to him that there weren't as many carts in the caravan. And we got to see him argue with his father over the south, with Idris arguing that Dries is not doing enough to stop the bandits from raiding the towns. And Raynor telling his son that they can't just invade the area. They need to cooperate with Dries. This is part of their kingdom. And we got to see Raynor is a king now, and he said that if Lyre was caught, that he would get a fair trial, but even Lyre himself says that Ritter didn't get a fair trial. He didn't give him a fair trial, so what makes anybody think that Lyre will get a fair trial also? So both Lyre and Elizabeth, they really miss Lyre, and they apparently don't fully believe that Ritter is guilty. They don't believe that Ritter is guilty, nor do they believe that Lyre is guilty. So the horse that Ritter met in a jail cell, that horse who is the executioner, I figure he collaborated with Lyre when it came to figuring out a way to save Ritter. So that must have been the horse that Lyre was riding on. That must have been the executioner's horse. the executioner, he's a horse, and he's riding a horse. Anyway, so I figured that the horse himself, the executioner, believed that he had a feeling that Ritter was not guilty, because he was a little too friendly in that meeting he had with Ritter in the jail cell. So and we got to see, well, we unfortunately, we saw Lyre having to take a life. It was something that he was very guilty about, and that was the first time he took a life. So he felt guilty about that, but he had to set those feelings aside and go about his plan to save Richter from being executed. So we got to see how Lyre got to save Richter, and him being in the castle, different parts of the castle and in the town as well, having to go without food for days. So that's all for now. We'll play the other half of this new update next time. So, and that would be from Richard's perspective. So, and hopefully we'll see the aftermath of all of it with Richter and Lyre, whether they escaped or not. So whether they managed to avoid the horse cavalry or not. So okay, thank you all very much for watching. Goodbye.